ever noticed how some mornings you wake up feeling like you can effortlessly conquer the entire world, while other days just putting on matching socks feels like an insurmountable hurdle? It is fascinating how our internal energy battery fluctuates so wildly from one day to the next. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Oh, absolutely. Some days I hit the ground running with absolute clarity, laser focus, and relentless enthusiasm, and other days I spend 20 minutes staring blankly into the refrigerator wondering what bread is even for. It is such an unpredictable emotional roller coaster ride of a human experience. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Right? That exact inconsistency is precisely why we need to unpack the concept of carving out what productivity experts call a power day. Not just waiting passively for lightning to strike, but actually engineering that positive momentum on purpose rather than leaving it to sheer accidental chance. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
I love that framing because engineering momentum sounds so deliberate and empowering. We so often fall into the trap of thinking high energy is purely accidental, something you either magically possess or completely lack without any personal agency whatsoever in the matter. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
Exactly. We romanticize this idea of spontaneous, effortless motivation, but successful people, or simply people who fiercely protect their inner peace, tend to shake off that passivity and take the bull by the horns right away. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Taking the bull by the horns. I love that idiom. It really captures that proactive stance, where you stop letting the chaotic outside world dictate the terms of your day, and you start calling the shots instead, with absolute confidence and personal determination. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Precisely, and that proactive stance starts the very second your alarm clock goes off in the morning. Do you hit snooze religiously, Jake? Or are you one of those terrifying individuals who leaps out of bed instantly? It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Confession time. I used to be a serial snooze button offender of the worst degree. I would endlessly bargain with myself, hitting snooze 3 times until I had to scramble like mad. But lately, I've tried hard to nip that bad habit firmly in the bud. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Nip it in the bud. What a fantastic phrasal idiom for stopping a detrimental habit before it blossoms into a full-blown crisis. What made you finally change your tune and break that destructive cycle once and for all? It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Honestly, realizing that those 9 extra minutes of fragmented, half-asleep drifting weren't actually resting me at all. They were just quietly stressing me out and setting a deeply chaotic, rushed tone for my entire morning. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
That is profoundly true. It creates unnecessary cognitive friction right out of the gate. When you start your morning feeling rushed and reactive, your brain gets immediately trapped in a state of perpetual catch-up. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
And once you fall behind like that, playing catch-up drains your mental battery at an alarming rate. By noon, you are completely burned out simply from reacting to incoming demands rather than driving your own agenda forward with intention. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
Which brings us straight to the core philosophy of a power day: intentionality. It is never about cramming 50 frantic tasks into 12 hours. It is about choosing your anchor habits wisely and protecting them fiercely against outside interruptions. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Anchor habits, yes, those small, non-negotiable rituals that anchor your sanity. For me, it is brewing a proper cup of coffee in complete silence without looking at my phone. That single boundary changes everything for the better. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Resisting the irresistible urge to check your phone first thing in the morning is a monumental battle. Attempting a digital detox in those initial 30 minutes feels practically like climbing Mount Everest without oxygen. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
It really does. Modern smartphones are brilliantly engineered to hijack our dopamine receptors immediately. If you open your email first thing, you're instantly letting other people's urgent emergencies hijack your precious mental real estate. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
Mental real estate, such a vivid way to put it.
We only possess a finite amount of focused attention to give each day, yet we willingly hand over the keys to notification badges before we even brush our teeth. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Spot on. When you protect that early morning window, you are drawing a firm line in the sand. You are declaring that your focus belongs to you first, and the rest of the world can easily wait 20 minutes. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
I love that expression, drawing a line in the sand. It implies establishing an unbreakable boundary. But what happens when unpredictable life throws a massive wrench into your perfectly curated morning routine? It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Good old Murphy's Law. That exact moment is where most people typically throw their hands up in absolute despair and declare that the entire day is ruined. But a power day isn't about perfection, it is about resilience. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Resilience and rapid course correction are crucial. If your morning gets completely derailed by a spilled latte or an unexpected crisis email, you don't just write off the entire afternoon. You dust yourself off and pivot. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Exactly. We tend to fall victim to insidious all-or-nothing thinking. If we miss our 6 a.m. workout, we think, oh well, I might as well eat junk food and skip productivity entirely. It is such a slippery slope.
Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
A terribly slippery slope indeed. Once you compromise on one front, it becomes awfully tempting to throw caution to the wind entirely. How do you pull yourself out of that destructive mental trap? It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
By practicing genuine self-compassion, believe it or not. I used to beat myself up mercilessly over minor slips, which only made things exponentially worse. Now I tell myself, all right, that went sideways. Let's reset right now. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
That is such an underrated professional skill, mastering the power of the micro reset. You don't need an entirely new calendar day to start over. You often just need a 5-minute breather to clear the slate completely. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Clearing the slate, yes. Sometimes physically stepping away from the desk, taking 3 deep breaths, and drinking a cold glass of water acts like an instant hard reboot for your tired brain. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
A hard reboot. I love applying modern tech terminology to human biology. Sometimes our biological hardware simply freezes up because we have far too many mental browser tabs open simultaneously. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
That is genuinely the best analogy ever created. Too many active tabs open at once and the internal fan starts spinning loudly, which in human terms translates directly to irritability, brain fog, and silly mistakes. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
And speaking of stubborn brain fog, how do you personally handle that notorious mid-afternoon slump? That post-lunch dip in energy where everyone secretly wants to take a nap underneath their office desk? It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Oh, the dreaded 3 p.m. crash. That is usually the exact moment when my willpower hits absolute rock bottom. I used to reach compulsively for a sugary pastry, which gave me a temporary spike followed by a massive sugar crash. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
The classic sugar roller coaster. You feel energized for 20 frantic minutes, and then you suddenly feel like you are wading through wet cement for the rest of the afternoon. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Exactly. Now I consciously swap sugar for movement. Even a brisk 10-minute walk around the city block or some active stretching gets the blood flowing again. It wakes up the central nervous system instantly. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
Movement as medicine. It sounds like an exhausted cliché, but it never fails to deliver. When natural energy wanes, physical activity acts as an instant catalyst, sparking fresh focus and clearing mental clutter. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
It really does work wonders. And tying that back to our core theme, a power day isn't about white-knuckling your way through sheer fatigue. It is about working intelligently with your body's natural rhythms instead of fighting them. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
White-knuckling. Such a powerful idiom for holding on so tightly out of tension and stress that your knuckles literally turn white.
Trying to force productivity purely through stubbornness usually backfires spectacularly. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
It inevitably backfires every single time. You end up completely burned out by Thursday afternoon and spending your entire weekend recovering just so you can repeat the brutal cycle next week. That is no way to live. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
It is a truly vicious cycle. So instead of grinding relentlessly without pause, we need to focus heavily on energy management rather than obsessing solely over time management. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Energy management is the ultimate game changer. You can have every single hour meticulously scheduled on your digital calendar, but if your internal energy tank is completely empty, you won't accomplish anything meaningful. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Spot-on analysis. Let's talk practically about how we protect that fragile energy during the grueling workday. What are your strict boundaries when digital distractions come knocking? It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Oh, I am practically ruthless with notification settings now. All pings, badges, and pop-up banners are strictly silenced during deep work blocks. If something is genuinely an emergency, people know how to call me directly. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Silencing notifications is deeply liberating, but it can also induce mild separation anxiety at first. People worry they're missing out on something vital. What do young people call that? FOMO? It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Fear of missing out, exactly. But once you push past that uncomfortable initial withdrawal phase, you quickly realize 99% of those notifications were just empty digital noise, designed specifically to steal your attention. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
Digital noise, what a brilliant descriptor. When you finally turn down the volume of outside chatter and endless notifications, you can hear your own thoughts. That is where real creativity and problem solving happen. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
And that is precisely when you hit your productive stride. Have you ever experienced that magical psychological state where hours just dissolve and you are completely immersed in your work? Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
Flow state, yes, when hours feel like fleeting minutes because you are so utterly dialed in. It is arguably the most deeply satisfying feeling in professional life. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Dialed in. I love that expression. But getting into that elusive flow requires setting the stage properly beforehand. You cannot possibly enter a deep state of focus if your physical workspace looks like a tornado hit it. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
A cluttered physical desk often equals a cluttered mental state. I know some creative souls claim they thrive in organized chaos, but for most of us, clearing off the workspace creates immediate breathing room. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
It really does work wonders. Spending just 5 minutes at the end of the workday tidying up your desk is like leaving a clean slate ready and waiting for your future self tomorrow morning. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Your future self will thank you. That is such a compassionate, kind way to view daily habits. Every good choice you make right now is essentially a thoughtful gift to the person waking up tomorrow. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
That is such a profound perspective shift. Instead of viewing personal discipline as punishment or strict restriction, you start seeing it as an act of fundamental self-care. You are actively setting up future Jake for success. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
Future Jake sounds like an exceptionally lucky guy. But joking aside, reframing discipline as self-care completely shifts the psychological heavy lifting of hard work. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
It completely changes everything. You stop resenting the difficult tasks on your list and start viewing them as valuable investments in your inner peace and overall career progress. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
Let's touch briefly on evening routines, because a true power day doesn't magically end the exact moment you close your laptop lid. How you wind down in the evening directly dictates how you wake up. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Ugh, nighttime habits are critically important. I used to scroll mindlessly through social media right until my eyes burned, wondering foolishly why I couldn't fall asleep easily. Total rookie mistake on my part. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Harsh blue light and endless algorithmic scrolling are absolute sleep assassins. Your brain stays stubbornly wired because it thinks it is still processing bright daytime stimuli. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Exactly. Now I enforce a strict digital sunset, an absolute hour before bedtime. No glowing screens, just a physical book, soft ambient lighting, and letting my nervous system gracefully transition into rest mode. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
A digital sunset. What a poetic, lovely phrase. I am definitely stealing that terminology. It establishes a crystal clear boundary between the active production part of the day and the restorative recovery part. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Please steal away. It has been an absolute game changer for my overall sleep quality and morning alertness. And when you actually sleep deeply, waking up with high energy isn't an uphill battle anymore. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
It all comes full circle beautifully, doesn't it? Quality sleep fuels a strong morning sets up a productive power day, and a successful power day feeds a peaceful evening. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
It forms a wonderful virtuous cycle instead of a destructive vicious one. Each positive habit naturally reinforces the next, creating an unstoppable snowball effect of momentum. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
A powerful snowball effect. When you secure a few early wins under your belt early in the day, you feel truly unstoppable. Even unexpected challenges suddenly feel entirely manageable. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
That confidence boost is incredible. When you tackle your absolute hardest task first thing in the morning, what productivity authors often call eating the frog, everything else feels effortless by comparison. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Eating the frog, such a vivid, unforgettable idiom, popularized by Mark Twain. If the worst thing you have to do each day is eat a live frog, you might as well do it first thing and be done with it. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
And the rest of the day tastes remarkably sweet by comparison. No more dreading that one looming task hanging over your head like a threatening dark cloud. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Hanging over your head like a dark cloud, the mental weight of avoidance is so heavy. We expend vastly more emotional energy dreading unpleasant tasks than it actually takes to complete them. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Ain't that the absolute truth? Procrastination is essentially a brutal emotional tax. You pay heavy interest in constant anxiety every single hour you put off doing the work. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Procrastination as an emotional tax. I love that framing. It highlights the hidden reality that avoidance is never free. It directly costs us our inner peace. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
So true. Taking action, even messy, imperfect action, breaks that exhausting tax cycle immediately. You reclaim your mental freedom on the spot. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Imperfect action triumphs over paralysis by analysis every single time. People get so hopelessly paralyzed trying to find the absolute flawless approach that they never even take a first step. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Analysis paralysis is a productivity killer. Done is almost always superior to perfect because you can always iterate and improve on something tangible that exists, but you can never edit a blank page. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
You can't edit a blank page. That is golden wisdom for writers, creators, and professionals alike. Just getting initial words on the page or steps on the ladder completely changes the dynamic. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
It breaks the physical inertia. Inertia is powerful physics. Objects at rest tend to stay at rest, but once you set things in motion, it takes significantly less effort to keep rolling forward. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Basic physics working entirely in our favor. Newton's first law applied directly to personal productivity. I love that perspective. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Science completely backs up our power days. Seriously, though, momentum is a real psychological phenomenon. Once you score a tiny win, your brain releases dopamine, fueling your drive for the next challenge. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Dopamine working as your own personal cheerleader. Speaking of which, how do we sustain that vital drive when the initial morning excitement inevitably wears off around midday? It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
That is where setting micro milestones comes into play. Instead of staring intimidatingly at the massive mountain left to climb, you break your afternoon into bite-sized, manageable chunks. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Bite-sized chunks, such a practical strategy for keeping paralyzing overwhelm at bay. It prevents your brain from triggering emergency stress responses when workloads spike unexpectedly. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Exactly. When you treat your afternoon like a series of short, focused sprints rather than one grueling, endless marathon, your stamina lasts twice as long. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Sprints versus marathons. What a fantastic distinction. We often exhaust ourselves trying to maintain a frantic, unsustainable pace all day, when what we truly need is sustainable rhythm. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Rhythm over brute force. Musicians talk constantly about tempo, and professional life is remarkably similar. If you find your natural groove, everything flows so much more smoothly. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Finding your groove. I love that musical metaphor. It reminds us wonderfully that productivity doesn't have to feel like grinding manual labor. It can feel creative and fluid. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
And even when things get tough, knowing you possess the mental tools to reset changes your entire psychological landscape for the better. Absolutely. And that makes all the difference.
So, as we bring all these pieces together, let's remind ourselves, a true power day isn't about rigid perfectionism. It is about awareness, agility, and giving yourself permission to adjust on the fly. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Agility on the fly, yes. Rolling with life's punches rather than getting knocked flat by every minor inconvenience. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Rolling with the punches is an essential life skill. So if someone listening wants to transform tomorrow into an absolute power day, what is the single most important takeaway they should leave with? It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
I would say, stop waiting around to feel inspired. Decide what your non-negotiable anchor habit is. Protect your morning focus like your life depends on it, and extend grace to yourself when things get bumpy. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Protect your morning focus and extend grace to yourself. What a wonderfully balanced, realistic approach. No toxic hustle culture positivity here, just practical, grounded strategies. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Exactly. We don't need to hustle 24/7 until we completely collapse. We just need a little more conscious intention and a lot less mindless autopilot. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
A little more intention and a lot less autopilot. That is a mantra worth writing on a sticky note and placing directly on the bathroom mirror. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Consider that your homework assignment for tomorrow morning, everyone. Notice precisely when you slip into autopilot and consciously grab the steering wheel back. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Grab the steering wheel. I love that imagery. Before we officially wrap up today, Jake, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners embarking on their Power Day journey? It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Just remember that consistency beats intensity every single time. You don't need a massive, terrifying life overhaul. You just need one small, intentional choice repeated faithfully every day. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
Consistency beats intensity. What a phenomenal note to end on. Thank you so much for breaking all this down with me today, Jake. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
My absolute pleasure, Emma. Enjoy your power days out there, everyone, and go make it happen. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.
And thank you all so much for tuning in and spending this time with us. Until next time, keep shaping your days with purpose. It really changes how we experience our daily lives.
Take care, everyone. Absolutely, and that makes all the difference.